Hello, everybody. I recently had the fortunate experience of finishing the Leadville Trail 100 mountain bike race. Life-changing experience. Highly recommend it. It was 2 days ago, and so while it's fresh in my mind, I thought I'd make a quick video detailing my experience, a little bit about my background and preparation. And I want to emphasize from the beginning that I'm sort of a regular middle-aged dude, and I was able to do this amazing thing. And I hope that this perspective, complements a lot of the other great stuff out there. That's maybe a little more focused on the pro level athlete, or more experienced athletes or cyclists than I am, certainly. Um, so here is what we will cover today. Again, the regular guy perspective. A little bit about me. I'm 53. I have a family. I have a job. I'm a humble family doctor. I live in Colorado. Yes, living at altitude is a little bit of an advantage for this race. And I do have, I'm pretty consistent with my baseline activity level. I'm not exactly rolling off the couch here, but I'm by no means an exceptional athlete. I'm an average athlete who just happens to be active. My background is not in cycling at all. Um, in my 20s, I played a lot of pickup basketball. That slowed down after I ruptured my ACL at age 29, but followed that up, stayed active with lifting weights regularly, tennis, swimming, skiing. Got more into running in my 30s. I did complete 11 marathons, but slow. I'm a very slow marathoner. Only twice was under 4 hours. Did a few Olympic distance triathlons. The irony here is that during my triathlon experience, cycling was by far my weakest part of triathlons, but enjoyed them. Always did a lot of hiking. In my 40s, a little bit less running. I ran into an Achilles tendon problem at one point, had surgery, but still was able to run a little bit, and do weights and swimming. And then in 2020, I fell back in love with mountain biking. I went on a family trip to Moab and took my very basic mountain bike. I had done some biking before that, but irregularly. And that trip just sort of locked it in for me that I love being outside, just, vigorous exercise. And it was great because I couldn't run as much anymore. But I could still get a really good workout mountain biking and be outside. So anyway, I've progressed pretty consistently since then and increased my miles over the years. And then I started kind of looking into, okay, what are some mountain biking experiences I can do? And I went on regular weekend rides with a bunch of friends that I ride with regularly. But then I did do some sort of off-road experiences. So twice I did the Sunrise to Sunset race in Winter Park. That's like a team event, and you race a 7.5 mile loop, and pretty tough loop, climbing and some technical stuff. Um, uh, that kind of really helped me settle some nerves about doing competitive events on a mountain bike. I did the Lori Off-Road Triathlon in 2022, which was a great event up in Fort Collins, and that had like a 15-mile mountain bike part and a trail run and swimming in a lake. Probably the first longer event I did was last year in 2023. I did the Bailey Hundo, which is at Buffalo Creek here in Colorado, and that was an awesome event. It was it's billed as 100K, but it's actually more like 110K and 67 miles, and I think it was like 8,000 feet of climbing, mostly single track, beautiful, very well run event, beautiful area. And then this year, about a month before Leadville, I did the Silver Rush 50, which was a really critical experience. And then, of course, the Leadville 100 2 days ago. So what motivated me to do this? Well, I like having big goals. I think it helps to structure my life and my preparation. And I wanted to do it. I'm 53. I wanted to do it while my fitness was still decent, while I still could. My family and my friends were supportive of this, and that's it. I think having big goals is important in life. It helps you find your limits and understand more about who you are. A little bit about getting into the race. So I did try the lottery. I missed it. I think that's just sort of like a random deal. I didn't look into details around like the qualifying events. I decided I was going to go the fundraising route, and I ended up raising a few $1,000s for Colorado Outward Bound School, which was awesome. Great experience. I think there's so many good charities that Leadville you can select from on their website. And the advantage, additional unexpected advantage of doing the Colorado Outward Bound School was I got to meet up with the other people who did fundraising, not just for the mountain bike ride, but also for the Leadville 100 run. And those were awesome people. We encouraged each other on Strava. I met some of them to do some training runs, and it was just really cool little community, spontaneous community that we formed around doing this race together. So highly recommend that. And the Leadville Foundation and all the stuff they do, it's just really good work. So you can't recommend enough doing fundraising. Just added a whole other awesome element to this experience. All right, so let me get into sort of some of the nittier, grittier details here, and talk about my training and my training strategy and that kind of stuff. So my goal with training, I started training in January. The race is August 10th. So I started training in January. And my goal from the beginning, after doing some reading and such, was I knew, and first of all, about my baseline. I was riding like, I don't know, 30 miles a week, maybe, consistently. My other baseline fitness activities where I would consistently lift weights at least once a week. I like doing like compound movements. So I do deadlifts, squats, bench press, um, military press, lat pull down. Yeah, just basic combination weights and a little bit of cardio. And I ran once a week. I have a consistent like 4 or 5 mile run that I do. So run once a week, lift weights once a week, maybe ride mountain bikes 2 times a week on the weekends. Fun rides like 10, 15 miles on the Front Range in Colorado. So that was my baseline when I started around January. And my goal was simply to increase my aerobic base. I wanted a massive aerobic base. My goal was to get to the place where I could ride a long time at lower heart rate. So I wasn't burning matches. I knew it was going to be hard at elevation. And I had some other secondary goals too, which was to be consistent, try to just keep doing something most days. 3, I wanted to change my body composition a little bit. So I'm 6 foot even, and my comfortable body weight's around 185, maybe as heavy as 190 pounds, and that's from lifting weights and having a healthy but not restrictive diet and that kind of stuff. And I knew I needed to get a few pounds off and change my body composition. And I did end up getting down to, before the race, about 172 pounds. And my body composition definitely changed. My upper body became scrawnier. I got the cycle build, and a little. I'm not quadzilla by any means, but my quads got a little thicker, veinier. Calves got a little more developed. So, I got that Tyrannosaurus Rex look going just a little bit. And then, being having power at a lower weight, you definitely can do the climbs better. So that was a goal, and I achieved. Got mostly where I wanted to. And I wanted to also have a lot of base miles, not just indoor trainer, but outdoor rides, because one of the key things I picked up in the training is you really gotta train not just your legs and your engine, but your hands got to get stronger. There's some really long downhills in this ride. Your neck's got to get stronger. Your taint has got to get stronger. You just got to get to the point where you're not having saddle sores on long rides and you're not uncomfortable sitting in the saddle for a long time. That said, my goal, in addition to a long ride once a week and consistency, was doing cross training. I still maintain my weights routine. I focused a little bit more on lower body and core, but I made sure I did my squats and my deadlifts consistently. I still did some upper body stuff because you need upper body strength, and I tried to keep my weekly run in there, about 4 or 5 miles. And then stretching and things like that. So here's also I overcame some challenges along the way to try to be consistent. Like, a kind of funny story is, my family and I went on a cruise, and I was on a cruise boat for a week. So what are you going to do? They had 2 exercise bikes on this boat, and I hit those things for at least an hour a day. I think one day I did like 2.5 hours on them. I did every spin class available. It sucked. It was boring. I was covered in sweat from the humidity, but people thought I was crazy. But it was able to help me stay consistent. That was about 2 months before the race, actually. All right, so just a little bit about what I did. Here is my Strava. You're welcome to go and look at my Strava, and you can see, if you look back over time at my logs. This is, I'm working backwards from the race. I pretty consistently did one long ride a week, and that started months before, being 20 miles, and 25, then 30, and it peaked out before, a few weeks before the race, at about 50 miles. The longest training run I ever did was 56 miles. So yeah, that's and then I did maybe 2 other rides, 10, 15 miles during the week, and I did my run and my weights. And so I tried to do something 5 to 6 days a week. I took a rest day most of those days. You can see a little bit further back, I was mostly working on base. Earlier, way earlier, like when I started in the winter in January, February, March, I was doing a lot of time on an indoor trainer on Zwift. And this is really critical. And I think it is good to start as early as possible, like, months before, 6 months at least before the race, to get your aerobic base down. This really helped me definitely develop my power. I think I took a FTP ramp test when I first started, and my FTP was 207, which I got it pretty pedestrian, I think, as far as I know. But I was able to, with the consistent work, I was able to increase my base. And I think my FTP before the race was about 237. So I'm pretty proud of that increase. Much more importantly, I felt like I had way more power at lower heart rate, and I could just go longer. So that's the advantage there. Here's a little bit more about my Strava. Here's my training calendar. And you can see here, January, February, March, I was like 30 to 40 hours. I actually was sick a little bit in April and was traveling did some work travel. So that was a low month, 35 hours. But then I really started to ramp it up in May, 52 hours in May, 58 in June, 65 in July. And here we are in August, and after the race. So I don't know if this is a good ramp. I had a total of, I think right before the race, I had something like 2,700 total miles of cycling, and about 200K of climbing, plus the running and plus some weightlifting in there. So that's what I did. Here's my fitness. I wanted to show you how that changed. This is a Strava feature, fitness and freshness. Like, tracks, I don't know what the algorithm is, but it tracks your fitness over time and how it changes. And you can see, when I first started using Strava back in 2020, my fitness has steadily increased. But particularly this year, I would say that my fitness, starting about 6 months ago, was, I don't know, the score was like 65 maybe. And I just through very consistent riding and all that volume I showed you later that month, I was able to get my fitness. I think it peaked at like 110 or something like that. So it just, being consistent, putting in the work. You can also look at my Strava and see, my activities, and you can see how my relative effort changed over time and how I varied between easy and hard stuff. Uh, Not rocket science, just slow consistency. Okay, so that was sort of my training strategy. Um, in terms of other stuff I did. Okay, resources and motivation. So while you're on the trainer, you got a lot of time to do research and off time too. I watched a lot of YouTube videos, especially videos of the course because I hadn't been on it before. I listened to the Leadville Trail 100 MTB podcast. I think Hadi and Fatty do a great job. They have great interviews. They do have some stuff for sort of everyday average athletes, more like me, but they also have some pro oriented stuff. So I think it's a pretty balanced view. There's some great other, you know, um, content creators out there. Jace likes bikes. I actually met Jace at my corral. It was pretty cool, and I know he finished the race, although I think he had a spill, but he powered through it and finished. From the Ground Up's a great series. I think you can find it on YouTube now. It shows how hard it is because they've had, I don't know, a dozen or 2 dozen contestants, and I think they've only had one or two finishers. It's challenging even when you have pro coaching. There are some books out there. I think Strava is a great resource for looking at people that have finished it at your targeted pace. Following pros for motivation. I follow Keegan. I'm a big fan of Hannah Otto. Erin Hook's a local female rider that I've um, seen her like crush some rides and stuff. So that's just really motivating. Um, and looking at videos of other people who have done it. Um, a little bit about altitude. So I live at like 6,000, 6,200 feet. So I have an advantage. Living in Colorado is undoubtedly an advantage. We just have great riding here and so on. So I do sympathize with the sea level athlete. I think you got to get up to altitude because, first of all, you don't know how you're going to react unless you've spent a lot of time at altitude. And even me living here, I know at altitude I don't feel great. So altitude training was really critical. And um, a really key part of that experience was the Silver Rush 50. So I shared with you before, I did at Buffalo Creek, I did the hundo, and that was at about, I think it peaked out at like 8,000 feet. And I felt totally fine the entire time. That race, I did a lot of training and I felt fine. I had zero altitude problems. But the Silver Rush 50, which was just about a month before Leadville, is in the Lifetime series. This race, as you can see, was like 48 miles, 7,000 feet of climbing, but it's got a lot. It's got a lot of climbing density. It's just a lot of gnarly climbs, and you're up above 10, 5, or 11 more than you are on the Leadville Trail. Now, this race, I felt pretty good. I had decent power. I felt like my pace was good. I could eat and drink okay. But after the race, I felt like total crap. I had a severe headache. I was nauseous. I thought I was going to vomit. I cramped up really, really bad. And my the only explanation I could come up with was that it was a reaction to the altitude, a delayed reaction to the altitude, maybe from having heavy exertion at altitude. After the race, I'd kind of kicked in some altitude sickness. I don't think I had cerebral edema or high altitude pulmonary edema. I'm a physician and I know a little bit about these things, but um, I had some kind of reaction, and I didn't want to do that again. So I kind of committed at that point. Boy, I got to spend a lot more time at altitude on training runs. I got to get to know the course too. So that was, those things go together. And also, I needed to go up earlier and acclimatize. You're going to read all kinds of stuff or hear all kinds of stuff about acclimatization. There's this wacky theory out there that you can go up to Leadville the night before and fool your body into doing well at altitude. I think that's total nonsense. I don't think there's any support for that in the medical literature. The longer you can acclimatize, the better. Period. There's lots of stuff from mountain climbers on that strategy. So I went up like a full week before, uh, actually 6 days, and stayed at Bracken Copper Mountain, which are like 9,500 or something. Did some rides, but took it easy. And I think that helped me. Although, as you'll hear from my race experience, I still had some challenges with the altitude. Um, so anyway, yeah, the more time you can spend up there, the better. I did have the chance to pre-ride the course. I met with one other Andy, who was another Cobb's athlete, and we pre-rode a part of the course, and then I went up and did some more on my own. I saw the entire thing. I did it in first like 25-mile segments, and then I did a couple of rides and there were 50-mile segments, and that was huge. Just knowing what you're getting into in advance is tremendous. It makes a huge mental difference on race day. So, um, okay, um, goals, pacing, nutrition. So I knew from my prior races and my prior practice rides and all the research I'd done looking at other athletes on Strava and kind of combing through the results on the Leadville Trail 100 MTB website, that buckling was going to be a stretch for me. I was going to have a perfect day. But I still set all my goals for like an 11:30 finish time. And I wanted to hit my targets there. And I knew and having ridden the course, I knew I had to pace it out. My strategy with nutrition there was to try to take in, two uh, goos, a size of a goo amount of carbohydrates every hour, to drink water. I'll talk about my equipment here in a second, and to have electrolyte replacement in my bottle. And I know that I'm a sweaty, I'm a salty sweater. And I learned that a long time ago, so I knew I had to replace it. And I feel better, and I don't get a headache if I replace my electrolytes. So that was part of the strategy there as well. So um, going through a little bit about gear, hydration, and strategy. So here are some of the things I used. Just goo. I had, sports beans or gels or blocks, Cliff blocks, and stuff like that, so you could get to it easily. What I ended up doing was getting a top tube bag and just pouring crap into there so I could grab it super easy and grab goos out and put my wrappers right back in there. I didn't have to reach around to my back. I'm not a super experienced like road cyclist where I'm used to wearing a jersey and doing that kind of stuff or riding one-handed. So I kept it simple and did it this way. For hydration, what I ended up using, I started the race with this Osprey 2.5 liter hydration pack. It was just full of water. As I said, I had my bottle was water and element, pretty dense mixture, so that I could get a lot of electrolytes in just a small sip. And I was drinking water out of my pack. And that's my top tube bag, the Rock Bros thing there. And then I also had a fanny pack. So I wore the back hydration 2.5 liter pack when I started the race. I'll talk about the crew in a minute, but at Twin Lakes, I switched out for the backpack for the hip pack. That's a 1.5 liter deal. I had that up Columbine, back down Columbine, and then I switched back to the other one. My crew replaced the fluids in it when I got down back off Columbine and finished the race with that thing there. A little bit about my bike. All right, so it's a 2023 Ibis Ripley. Love this bike. My regular bike's an Ibis Ripmo, so I'm familiar with Ibis. And when I first set out to do it, I actually had a S-Works, a very light bike. It was like 23 pounds. I test rode it on the course, and I did not trust it on the downhills. I'm not a very skilled downhill mountain biker. I've gotten a lot better. I would say now I'm like average. I'm a stronger climber, than the average biker, I would say. So I kind of traded in, got a little bit more bike so I'd be comfortable on the downhill. This is not the advised strategy for most people, but for me, it made sense for me to be comfortable. This is probably too much bike for most people. You'll hear and see most other people are on much lighter bikes. Some people are on hardtails. I know Keegan had some drop bars this year. There's some crazy stuff out there, but this is the bike I rode and I finished. So it worked for me. There were some other people that had bigger bikes out there too. So you know you got to just decide what's going to work for you. Another funny thing, my tools, I had them on the bike, standard stuff. I had a replacement tube strapped to one part of my bike. And then I had CO2 canisters, a stand start, and some levers. Oh, and a multi-tool. And yes, my friends, I rode flats. So I was in a huge minority. And yes, I know. I ride a clipless pedal. Sometimes I rode them on my trainer. I go out for road rides on them. I know how to use them. I won't say I'm a super experienced clipless pedals guy. I'm more comfortable on flats when I'm on, gnarly terrain. And I know there's, some differing data out there. Some people say their FTP is exactly the same on flats or clipless. Some people say they get 3 or 5% gain, especially over longer distances. But when I did training rides in the clipless, my feet got cramped, my legs got cramped from being in a position. Just needed to move my dogs around on the platform. So this is what I went with. And yes, I was in a minority, but I was not the only one. So was at one point in the race riding alongside another dude. He's like, "Hey, give me 5, man. We're flat pedal riders and we're flat pedal brothers." And so there's do what you need to do to be comfortable and do the race. So that's what I did. All right. So that's my gear. I talked about hydration pack and tools. Okay, race week. As I said, I went up to altitude 6 weeks before. I was tapering. I did get a few rides in. I did like 30 miles the week of the race, easy miles, just chilling. I was up at Brecon Copper. I did some trails I hadn't done before, like 1,000 feet, 15-mile type deals. It's carb loading, getting sleep, living my best life. A little bit about crew. So my family was my crew. My wife Karen, my daughter Helena, who's 17. They had not done it before. We came up with a plan. We wrote out the plan. Plan was simple. Be at the start. Get me to the start. Meet me at Twin Lakes. My daughter was going to switch out my bottle and all my goos and crap in my top tube bag. My wife was going to switch my hydration pack. That was it. And then I was going to go up Columbine, come back down and do it again. What I didn't count on was how hard a race day I had and the psychological advantage of having a crew. And I'll talk about that during the thing. But they were rock stars. And I love you guys. And you were so supportive. And thank you. I probably 99% chance I do not finish without the crew I had and your support. So thank you guys. Love you. So that's a crew. Day of race nutrition. I think I talked about that a little bit already, but the caffeine strategy is important. So I'm a regular coffee drinker. I have like 2 cups a day. Leading up to the race, I tapered back my caffeine so that I could use it during the race like a drug, like performance enhancing substance. And I was down to like half a cup of coffee before the race. Race day, I had a full cup in the morning, and then I had like 20 or 40 milligrams of coffee in my goos or gels or whatever. When I saw my crew at Twin Lakes twice, I had an iced coffee, and there's good evidence for caffeine, and I suggest that if you like that kind of stuff, you use it like a drug, but you got to taper down so it's more effective. Okay, all right, now it's time to talk about race day. Let me start by talking about the pre-race meeting. So the day before, there's an all-athlete meeting at 10 in the morning, and it's at the Lake County High School. And this event is just so inspiring. It's so awesome. They have, the usual stuff, safety, briefing, medical briefing, talk about the course, talk about the weather. They have other athletes who've done it before. They get up there and tell their stories. But the highlight is, and as you've probably seen in other sources online, the highlight is definitely hearing from the founders and people that live in Leadville that have been associated with the race for years, and people that have finished the race, some of them 30 times, and hearing stories about an 80-year-old guy who's finishing. He actually finished in 11 hours this year. And it is just so inspiring. You get to mix it up with other athletes. And I left that thing just like, I'm not quitting. I'm going to dig deep. I have guts and determination, and I was tearing up the whole time. So I can't recommend enough. Bring your family. It is so awesome an experience. Great time. Little funny story. I was sitting next to a athlete who was in from Germany. There were a number of international athletes. I think there were like every state was represented in like 25 foreign countries. And we were talking about crewing, and he had brought over a friend to crew. I told him my wife and my daughter were my crew, and he said, totally straight face, "Are they reliable?" And I just thought that was so funny. And they turned out to be reliable, but it is a kind of, on a serious note, you do have to have a reliable crew. It makes a huge difference, as I'm about to tell you. So, race day itself. I woke up. My corral was the blue corral, so we started at 6:42. You want to be in your corral like 6 a.m. I was staying about a half hour away from the start line. So I got up at like 3:45, and I had been up there for 6 days, and I had a little bit of low-grade nausea the whole time. And that's not uncommon for me at altitude. It did improve a bit, but then race day, I think a combination of just nerves and whatever. I didn't have a great breakfast. I went with oatmeal and walnuts and that kind of thing. I had a little bit of extra sugar in the way of juice. Made sure I had some protein in the form of yogurt and cottage cheese. This is not an unusual breakfast for me before long rides, and I've tolerated it well before. But my stomach just wasn't right. Anyway, got that stuff down, got all my stuff loaded up. My wife and my daughter drove me to the start line, and got in my corral. One of the great things, another great part of the race, in addition to the pre-race meeting, is just hanging out in the corral. And you get to meet other athletes. Everybody's, I love that camaraderie of, we're about to do something hard together. I met a number of other people who were small talking before. Some people had finished before, really humbly offering last minute advice. And there's some first timers alongside me, and we were kind of commiserating. It was just so fun, just a great vibe. And that you get to see the pros go off, and then you get to see the corrals ahead of you go off. And then finally it's your turn. So let me kind of show you the map here, and we'll go through one by one some of the aspects of the race. So you can do your own research and find online some of this stuff. But you start out of town, and it's downhill. It's a very, very fast start, and you're on the road for a while. And you're just packed up. So this is where drafting helps, and pacing, and you just want to make sure you don't crash. And then the race, in my opinion, really starts at the bottom of Keevens, and you start climbing. Now, in my corral and in my particular race, we were all bunched up there, and there were people that fell over, definitely weren't able to go whatever their desired pace was. The trail is like 2 to 3, maybe at the most 4 riders wide. And climbing up Keevens was just packed up. And I couldn't go the pace. I would have liked to go a little bit faster, not a lot, but a little bit faster. But anyway, you get to the top of there, it starts to space out a little bit. And then you have a little bit of cruising. You cruise down this long road section, space out a little bit, and then the Sugarloaf climb. And now you're starting to work. It's a long climb. It's not as hard as Keevens, but you're still grinding pretty hard. And you get to the top of there, and there's beautiful views up there, and you're pretty spaced out. This is where I felt most of my element. First of all, because it's climbing. Secondly, because it's a little bit rocky, and I like doing that kind of stuff. And I had a little bit more bike than a lot of other people did, heavier bike. So I was able to power through some of that part pretty well, and I'm feeling okay now. As I said before, my stomach was a little bit queasy, and my hydration and my nutrition was not going well. I was having probably hitting like half my goal. So instead of having 2 to 3 goos an hour, I was having one, and I was sipping water. I didn't want to take big bites because I felt like I might hurl. So that was not going well, but I had good legs, breathing was fine, all that. Enjoying myself, having a good race otherwise. Um, After the little road downhill section, after Carter Summit Aid Station, and then the downhill section, then there's kind of this longish, flattish, pretty fast area. Actually, around that time, you also go through what is a newer quote single track section through the Outward Bound property. It's not single track, guys. You're going through a grass field. Basically, it will be single track, kind of, maybe in a couple of years, as they wore ruts in there. But it's just a flat. You're cruising through a meadow, basically. Um, you get to the other side of that. You do this long, flat kind of dirt road section, and then eventually you come to a downhill, or eventually you get to Twin Lakes. I should add, I skipped over the pipeline downhill, which is the gnarliest downhill of the thing. You can see videos of this online. It's scary for road bikers. It wasn't scary for me as a mountain biker, but you just got to watch it because other riders, some are going crazy and trying to pass. There's some who aren't as experienced, and they may back you up some. So you just got to be careful and super cautious on there. That's all. But that's actually a fun part of the course, in my opinion. So anyway, eventually get to Twin Lakes. I'm feeling okay. Again, my nutrition and hydration is behind, but nothing terrible has happened yet. My wife and daughter meet me at Twin Lakes. We're about 40 miles into the race, and we switch out the hydration packs, and my daughter switches out my goos and stuff. Had iced coffee, feeling okay. I took my heavier clothes off, and I'm down to a t-shirt, and went up Columbine. Now, this is where it falls apart for a lot of people, and that's true for me as well. I'll show you the results here in my Strava too, and I did not meet anywhere near the time I did in practice runs. I just didn't have it. You're backed up. There's a lot more people walking than you might expect. This is actually an advantage I had with the flats is I could hike a bike faster than anybody out there. And I actually am pretty good at that at baseline. So I was biking around people. There's another interesting element around this point in the race, and just before we got to Columbine, we started to see the pros come down, and they were freaking moving. I was so impressed how fast they were going. Total reckless abandon, sometimes on really sketchy terrain, sometimes trying to pass each other. And there's, in some cases when you start to get to the Columbine, people are climbing slowly or walking, and it's sketchy. Like there were a couple of near misses I witnessed. Um, Downhill riders almost hitting uphill riders. I didn't see anything terrible, but man, it is quite an experience going up there. And then you get up above the tree line in Columbine. This is a 7+ mile, 3,100 foot climb, and about the last 600-700 feet of it is above the tree line, and you're totally exposed. You're at over 12,000 feet. You're a little bit maybe short of breath, and you don't feel good. And this is where, for me, it got very, very hard, even more so than my training rides. And it might be just because I was tired or nervous. I wasn't keeping up with hydration and nutrition again, as I've said. And then I threw up. So I finally did get to the top of Columbine. I burned a match or two at the very top, trying to make up time. And that was a mistake. I was behind the aid station, and I threw up. Not much, because there wasn't much down there, but I actually started to feel a little bit better after that, and I knew I had the downhill ahead of me. And so I started just trying to have like just one, cliff block or a little piece of something or half a gel, sipping water, replacing electrolytes, and then I powered down the downhill, which I did pretty well on. So pulled into around a little over mile 60, Twin Lakes for the second time. Meet my crew. And my friends, this is where things started to get dark. I was ready to quit. Even though I just finished a downhill, I was like, I cannot finish this race. I can't drink. I can't eat. I threw up once already. And to their everlasting credit, my wife and daughter were just like, okay, well, listen, we're parked at Outward Bound, the next aid station, or a couple aid stations away. Why don't we just try to get there? And then, you can just put your bike on the van, which is already there. And I was like, I had some iced coffee. I actually had a pretzel or two, and I was feeling a tiny bit better. And I was like, all right, that sounds like a good plan. So they kind of fooled me, which I'm grateful for now. And I got back on my bike and I got through it. Now, to be rewarded for this effort, the weather turned really sour at this point. There was a rainstorm that came in. It got pelted with rain for about the next 2 miles. That was a really dark time. But I had in my mind that I just have to make it to Outward Bound and then I'm going home. So your mind does really funny things. I mean, honestly, at one point in here, I was like, I hope I get hit by a car because it means I don't have to finish. Crazy stuff that you don't recognize as crazy at the time. So anyway, didn't do a great job between Twin Lakes inbound and getting to Outward Bound, but I got there, rolled in. I made the cutoff by I think like 12 minutes or so, and I just laid down the ground and I told my wife and daughter, I am done. They started feeding me, got some pretzels, had another iced coffee, like um, was drinking, and people all over were like, "You can do it, you can do it, you can do it." My wife and daughter, again to their credit, are just like, "Well, why don't we just meet you at a Carter aid station? Just go to the next one, and we'll see you there and see what you can do. And you're a strong climber, and maybe the next section will be good for you, and all that." And I was like, "Oh my God." I probably spent like 10 minutes at a aid station, way longer than I should have if I was really focused, but I was not focused at this point. And they convinced me to continue. I kind of cruised out of there. I was not in a good mood. Got to Powerline, and then something seemed to shift. And I kind of realized, okay, I put so much effort into this. So many people are here supporting me, the whole community, raising money. Just going to put my best effort in here. And it started to turn around little by little. I started to get a little extra energy. I started to be able to eat a little bit more. And on Powerline Climb, some beast came out. I didn't even know it was in there, and I crushed that thing. I hiked part of it for sure, but again, I'm on flats. I'm in running shoes. I was pushing hard and fast, passing people. And then I got on my bike and I climbed the entire rest of that thing. I cleaned that thing, and I passed. I think I looked up my stats, like 32 people on the Powerline climb. And I'm so proud of that moment. I've started to feel really good. I got my confidence back. Little competitor in me came out. And then the race from there is better. That is the crux of the race. I mean, Columbine sucks, but the Powerline climb on the way back, most people say this is the most demoralized they feel. Made the Carter Summit aid station by a good amount, 10, 12, 15 minutes, something like that. You know, they say during races you shouldn't do something you've not done before, and I did something I hadn't done before, which was I took electrolyte tabs that were at the aid station at Carter Summit, and that really helped. I started to feel better. I still was nauseous, but I was able to sip and take a little bit of nutrition here and there, and then I was like, "Hey, I'm going to finish. I know I can finish from here." I had about an hour and a half to make it, and most people can make that final segment in about an hour. So I did it, and that last segment was pretty magical. I was riding with some other riders for a while. We were joking around. Dudes were like, "After this, I'm never going to touch my bike again." Another guy's like, "I might touch mine, but only to sell it." I was hanging out with a guy from Michigan named Jeff, and he was just giddy at the end. He's like, "I've never done a bike race before, and I'm from Michigan, and it's flat, and this is the greatest day of my life." And that sucked, but I loved it. And we were just commiserating and laughing the whole way. You're in such a great mood, and we knew we were going to finish, and it was awesome. Now the awesomeness was pretty good until you get to this. A few years ago, I guess they changed the end of the course, and instead of finishing on sort of a road climb into town, you take this detour and you go up this rocky as heck segment that just sucks because you're going really fast and then you turn and you go uphill up this rocky segment. You're like, I thought I had no more climbing. It is demoralizing. It's just such a gut punch. And you get up that thing, power through it because you can smell the finish line. You're like 2.5, 3 miles from the finish now. You go up this long dirt road that's a steady climb. And finally, you hit town, you turn right, and you're headed towards the finish line. And for me, especially after the vomiting and barely getting through and not eating and drinking well all day, I was just so overcome with emotions. I crossed the finish line. You can see here some of my official times and my Strava and stuff like that. My official time I think was 12:45, so I finished under 13 hours, which is considered finishing. Now, I know I didn't buckle, and some people consider that the official finish, but believe me, this was absolutely a victory in my column. So didn't buckle. And as you know, 45 minutes, not eating and drinking well. Could I have buckled under ideal circumstances with a better bike and clipless pedals and better nutrition strategy? Maybe. Still would have been really close though. And for me, again, making this video as an average athlete, hopefully to inspire some of you out there, it was a victory to finish, especially overcoming the hardships and doing that with my family. So I was overcome with emotions. The finish line was super emotional. One of the pros, I think one of the female pros, put my medal on. I wish I knew who it was. I would have, tried to enjoy the moment more. But there were lots of Leadville officials hanging around, lots of other finishers. It was a beautiful moment. My family, my wife was in tears, and one of the guys that was representing the race just came up, gave me a huge hug. He's like, "Welcome to the Leadville family." And I'm choking up just thinking about it now. So awesome. And then I was just destroyed, laid down. I didn't feel as bad as I did actually after Silver Rush. I didn't get a headache. I didn't cramp up. Just laid down for a while, soaked it all in, soaked up the atmosphere. And so great experience. I hope you're getting from me that this was tough. One of those things in life that is tough, but so rewarding in the end. So anyway, final reflections. Leadville, the whole Leadville race community is a great community. It's really special. They do a lot of amazing work. You meet a lot of those people in the pre-race meeting. I was very lucky to be healthy enough and be in a position to go on this journey of self-discovery. Got in great shape. It was a good experience for my family as well. I pushed beyond my expected limits, learned a ton about myself, and I'm happy to help any of you just with basic advice. I hope this video was informative, maybe a little bit inspiring, and that you got something out of it. So good luck out there with your own adventures. Thank you.